Good evening. Welcome to the Columbus Common Council's regular meeting for Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Time is now 6:30 p.m. I am in Columbus City Hall chambers, and we have the remaining council members as well as some staff members participating tonight via Zoom conference. Pat, would you please take the roll?
Adams.
Present.
Gray.
Present.
McCabe.
Here.
Piperone. Piperone. Buddy.
Here.
Thank you. Ryan.
Here.
And Tom is excused.
Did you call Reed?
I didn't hear my name.
Reed. Sorry, Reed.
Here.
Okay. Mayor Tolman's excused. Thank you. Number two, if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting has been noticed with all local and state statutes. Number 4 is to approve the agenda. I think Administrator Kyle Ellison informed me earlier that number 3 we currently may need to table as we did not get an updated contract as we had hoped to for the building inspection services from Safe Built. Is that correct, Kyle? Yeah.
That's correct. We requested last Wednesday right after the previous meeting, and we have not received the contract yet, so it'll have to be considered at the next meeting.
Okay. So if anybody would like to form a motion with that exception, be welcomed. Oh, I'm sorry, and we also had one other exception in the consent agenda. The Council and Committee of the Whole minutes from 11/17 and 11/24. It did suggest on the agenda that they'd be available Monday, but they will be made available prior to the next regular meeting, I'm informed. So that will also need to be amended.
Adams moves to approve the agenda with the exceptions named. Gray will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none. We can move on then to the consent agenda, which with number 1 scratch just consists of applications for operators licenses from the term of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th of 2022. I just have one licensed in the packet in the name of Patricia A. Vogel. I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda if there are no questions.
Mike will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, consent agenda is approved. Under new business, number 1 is consider and take action to delegate authorization for the CHLPC to receive and recommend bids on the phase 3 of pavilion restoration project. So this was at the previous COW meeting and is really just a step in the process to formally authorize the CHLPC to go through a formal bidding process and receive the bids for their phase 3 of their window restoration project. And then essentially just report back to council with their recommendation of the bidder. There was some thoughtful discussion between the CHLPC and council and the mayor at the last COW meeting. So it sounded like there was some consensus to get this to be formally in their hands, at least for this phase of their project, and so that they can move on to the bidding. Are there any questions or? All right, if there are no, oh, Ian?
So my only thing is, are we only going to authorize them to receive and recommend bids, or to actually receive and accept bids, and then the council just votes on accepting the donation? That was my understanding of the last meeting, that we would just be accepting the donation, not accepting a bid. The CHLPC, we were going to give the authority to accept a bid, and this is written differently.
Kyle, do you recall, or can you speak to that?
So when it comes to the awarding the bid, the city council would have to delegate their authority to CHLPC to award the bid, and then if they award the bid, the next step is the contract also being signed. Essentially, CHLPC as a part of the city, the city, just like any other committee or commission, really serves as the clearinghouse for all of those duties and responsibilities. So I guess that's a good question. I think, what we had talked about, I thought, was that the bidding and the recommendation off of the evaluation would all be vested in HLPC, but that the city council would then, at the same time they accepted the donation, accept the recommended bid. But that the city council can delegate any of its authority that it wishes in that. Typically, when it comes to signing contracts, that power is vested only in a very few people, and Paul Johnson might give us a better perspective on that.
The contracts generally are to be signed by the mayor and the city clerk. Having said that, Kyle is correct that the council can delegate that authority if it so chooses. It would be my preference to follow what Kyle just outlined and have the CHLPC do all of the legwork here, but have the council put its final seal of approval on things. But that is the council's final decision. So I think tonight you should make one or two different motions. You should make a motion to authorize HLPC to go through the bid process, and then you should either make a motion to authorize them to accept the bid, or you should make a motion to have them bring their recommendation back to the council for final vote. So one or the other, but two separate motions either way.
Thank you, Attorney Johnson. That was my understanding, is that the latter that Paul Johnson just outlined, the authorize the bid process to the CHLPC, and then it would come back to council for final approval, and to accept the donation at the same time. I see Carolyn Frederick shaking her head, and that's familiar to her, and that's how the process has gone before. Trina, did you want to speak?
Yeah, in general, I would prefer for council to have final approval, but in this case, I feel quite comfortable with the CHLPC for them to carry the whole process for the phase 3 on the windows.
Ian Gray, go ahead.
I very much feel the same way as Alderperson Reed. I think that this process, specifically the CHLPC bid and we just authorize the donation in the end.
I guess my only concern is that the contracts should be signed by either the mayor or the city administrator. If that's the preference of Attorney Johnson, that would be my preference as well, just to keep everything really clean cut. Alder Adams?
I just want to see if I recollect things correctly. So we're putting out the bid, but we pretty much know which contractor it's going to be, assuming that everything shakes out. So it's kind of a formality that we're doing this for bringing us up to speed in the legal sense, if I'm saying that correctly. I guess I don't see, I can say it, just give me a second. So basically bringing the whole thing around, I think if we allow the CHLPC to do the legwork and then just have them come back for a final say-so, then we kind of mitigate the whole mess that we got ourselves in the first place with not understanding what was going on and not crossing our T's and dotting our I's. So I would go with that too. I probably said that very poorly, but I'm on board with the CHLPC doing the legwork and then bringing it back to the council.
Go ahead, Kyle.
So I just wanted to make sure, you know, the intent behind it, I think, is to provide the support to CHLPC to make sure that all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed so that, you know, everyone's on the same page and there's no question at any point later on whether it was, you know, done correctly or done in the right steps or one step versus the other. And I think there was also consideration that it wouldn't go to a committee of the whole, it would go right for final approval. So basically, you'd always be within 2 weeks at almost any time of receiving your final approval. And so I just think that this would kind of keep on track with a lot of other practices where we're managing these big contracts. While it seems like it's a formality, you know, I in respect of the public bidding process, I wouldn't say it's a foregone conclusion. The winner will be whoever the lowest responsible bidder is, and it might very well be the company that was currently selected, or there might be another company that comes out of the woodwork, and low bids can be for a variety of reasons. So I don't like to assume the end of a bidding process before we actually see the results, but I think it's still very workable, incorporated in the way that we discussed, and with Paul Johnson's kind of recommendation that the city council still retains its approval authority.
And I would just like to add that the timeline, like you mentioned, would be the same, regardless of whether we're just approving the donation or whether or not we are the one signing the contracts and approving the donation within the same evening on a regular meeting and not coming back to another call. So it is still my preference to have the city be in charge of the contracts. Ian Gray?
As long as we can accept the bid and the donation on the same day and the timeline doesn't change, then I would be okay with that. That's perfectly fine. My primary driving force behind the CHLPC being able to accept it was so that we weren't extending another 2 weeks past. But if we can do that the same day, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. So if I gathered this correctly, Attorney Johnson, what we need to formally approve tonight is to authorize the bid process to the CHLPC, and then to receive bids and recommendations for the phase 3 of the pavilion restoration project, and then they'll bring it back to council for formal approval. Okay.
Right, if this is the path you're going to take, you can lump all of that into one motion now, and it would read something like, authorize HLPC to send out for bids, receive bids, and evaluate bids, and recommend to the council a final bid winner.
Right.
And then I think you're
I think the way that the current agenda is worded would actually be very similar to that. Okay, if there are no, if there's no further discussion or questions, I'll take a motion.
Alder Gray will move to delegate the authorization for the CHLPC to receive, evaluate, and recommend bids on the phase 3 of the pavilion restoration project.
Kate will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Number one, consider and take action to delegate the authorization for the CHLPC to receive and recommend bids of Phase 3 of the Pavilion project and return to council. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Carolyn Fredericks, to approach the podium.
I just wanted to say thank you, council, and thank you for your patience through all this phase 3, project, part of the phase 3 of the project. I also wanted to say thank you to Kyle. We've kind of been working together on the processes and a better understanding, I think, for everyone. Also, a thank you to Amy Jo, who has offered to come up with kind of a checklist, for projects and for these kind of situations. So, everybody knows what the steps are and can follow along in the checklist. So that's something new, and that I think that's going to be a great addition. So I just wanted to thank everybody for all of us working together. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. And I concur. Thank you to city staff that has kind of helped, I think, bridge just a little bit of the divide and make sure that everything is just followed in the proper processes. I think they'll be best for everybody. Thank you. Number two, then we'll move on to consider and take action on the cost for the Summit Court snow removal for 2021 season. This had been discussed at the 2 previous COW meetings, I believe. Kind of bounced around a lot of ideas, but ultimately I think the consensus was built for to charge for this year a $50 fee, and if we are to continue in further years to do a deeper evaluation, if this is to be continued. But as it stands for this year, a $50 fee per snow removal event. And the HOA will request the money and pay it to the city is what was decided upon. Is there any discussion on the item? Okay. If there's no discussion, I'll take a motion to approve the Summit Court snow removal for 2021 season.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the Summit Court snow removal for 2020-2021 season.
Alder Gray.
Katie, are we approving a specific number that we're charging per incident? It's not clear to me what we're approving right now.
Yes, I did mention the $50 fee is what the consensus was for this year, is a $50 fee per event.
I think we should probably have that in the motion. I see
Sure.
Attorney Johnson shaking his head. I think that needs
Okay.
to be more clear.
Do we need to retract that motion then, Paul? Or does,
No, just amended to add the $50 reference.
okay. Alder Piperon, could you amend your motion, please?
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve a $50 fee for the Summit Court snow removal for the 2020-2021 season.
Per
Can
instance,
you add per incident or?
Per event.
yeah.
That's the third time. Offered by filmmakers to approve the Summit Court snow removal with a $50 fee per instance for the 2020-2021 season.
Alder Gray will second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve a $50 fee per instance for the cost of the Summit Court snow removal for 2021 season. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. New business number 3 is tabled until the next regular meeting. So we'll move on to new business number 4. It's consider and take action on the claims in the amount of $1,966 and $897.22. Whew, that was a long one. And Kyle just wanted to chime in about the claims for this.
Yeah, just to
evening.
touch base, it's a really large amount, much larger than most of our claims. And it's actually sort of an off week where there's not a whole lot in there. But there's the capital projects have some payments in there, so that's $700,000 there. And then there's another almost 1.2 million that is transfers that we normally make, and $1 million of that is basically being transferred from within our funds to other funds to pay for things like the Huber Screen and Hibbard Street. And so it goes from one account to the other, and it shows here to let you know that that amount of money is moving kind of on the balance sheet from more of the savings aspect to the checking aspect. And so that's kind of the combined reason why we have nearly $2 million in claims.
Thank you, Kyle Ellison. If there is no questions, no further questions for Kyle, I'll take a motion to approve the claims.
Alder Gray will move to approve the claim in the amount of $1,966,897.22.
Okay, we'll second that.
Okay, number 5 is report of city officers. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we'll do a roll call.
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to number 5, the report of city officers. And for that, I'll turn it over to City Administrator Kyle Ellison.
Thank you. Just a few things. Since we wrapped up the budget last week, I just wanted to keep you kind of in the loop about the processes that are going on. The finance director and myself are working on getting the tax bill information compiled and cross-checked, putting on all the special assessments and special charges, applying the state credits to make sure that those are applied properly to the right properties. And also we're starting kind of the beginning phases of the budget books that you'll each receive. So that's kind of all in the works. With all that information coming together, if everything goes well, I'm hopeful that bills could be in the mail as early as next week, tax bills. And I know while not everyone looks forward to them, they certainly anticipate them. So hopefully those will be going out in the next week, like I said. A reminder to all the elected officials with the city council, but also anyone interested, that the election cycle for local officials has opened up again. And people can register to run for an elected office currently and circulate their nomination papers, and they have up until January 5th to submit their nomination papers to the clerk. And any questions that they might have, I would suggest contacting Pat, the clerk, and she'll be able to help you with any questions you might have. Finally, kind of the end of a long year of COVID and a holiday time where a lot of people are, kind of stuck at home with the COVID restrictions, they're having a food drive at the senior center, and they're sponsoring that to benefit the Columbus Fall River Food Pantry, which is kind of coming into a time of great need traditionally, but especially now with COVID. So that's going to go from December 5th to the 12th, and you can drop off non-perishable food items at the senior center at 125 North Dickinson Boulevard. The hours are going to be Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then Saturdays from 8 to noon. Again, that's December 5th through the 12th. And they have kind of a limited contact drop-off where if you pull up, they'll come get the food right from your car. You don't have to get out. They ask basically Monday through Friday, if you call the senior center at 623-5918, they'll come out and get your food. On Saturdays, they'll have enough people they'll be watching, so you can just pull up on those Saturdays and they'll come get the food from your vehicle. And then the final thing would be this time of year, don't leave any of that stuff just outside the senior center, whether it's freezing or animals. It just doesn't work out well to leave stuff piled up. So please, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or Saturday, 8 to noon. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kyle. If there's no further comments from council, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Alder Gray moves to adjourn.
Reed seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. We'll return in just a few minutes with the committee of the whole. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Good evening and welcome back to the Columbus Common Council's Committee of the Whole meeting Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Time is now 7:02 p.m. and I am in Columbus City Hall chambers. We do have the rest of council as well as some city staff members participating via Zoom this evening. Pat, would you please take the roll?
Adams,
Present.
Gray,
Present.
McCabe,
Here.
Pfeifferone,
Here,
Reed,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
and Tom is excused.
This meeting has been noticed with local and state statutes. Number 3 is to approve the agenda. I don't think that there's any amendments necessary, so I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Gray will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Number 4 is citizen comments. I don't believe we had anybody signed up to speak via Zoom conference this evening, and I don't have anybody signed up here in council chambers. Is that correct? Okay. So we will then move on to number 5, which is department reports. We do have the treasurer's report from October 2020. Is there any questions or concerns with the treasurer's report from council? Seeing none, we'll move on then to number 6, which is the committee minutes. In the packets this evening, you have the Columbus Water and Light minutes from September 15th, 2020, and the Community Development Authority minutes from August 17th, 2020, and September 21st of 2020. Were there any questions or concerns? Ian Gray, Alder Gray?
Sorry, I should have chimed in before. It's hard because under the municipal court fund.
Are you speaking to the treasurer's report?
Yeah.
Okay.
In treasurer's report under the municipal court fund.
Mm-hmm.
Are we operating at a $43,000 loss this year?
What page are you on, Ian, of the treasurer's report? Is
My pages aren't numbered.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, yeah, they're not, sorry. Just one moment.
So the activity through October 31st does show $43,000, but you have to look at, it's the reverse of what you think. The revenues are 128,000 and the expenses are 85. So that 43 is a number, but it is basically it's a positive number shown in this revenues minus expenditures. It shows up as a negative, but it's actually a good thing right now.
So what was projected to be due to the city was 62,000 and what we received was 31,425. I don't understand how that's positive.
So it depends if you're talking about the municipal court fund or if you're talking about the revenue line that would be in the general fund budget. Where it is the city of Columbus, at the current rate, and this is all set by statute, the city of Columbus is under on the expense from the court, which means the city of Columbus is receiving less revenue than they anticipated. My guess is, with a very round number and being off that far, is It looks like when this budget was adopted, it was probably either the first year or almost, right at the inception, and they were really doing educated guesses. So the general fund is down 30,000 in revenue from the court, but the court itself has taken in already $5,000 more than they anticipated bringing in. So it's a difference of funds and how you look at it. If you look at it from a municipal court fund perspective, the fund is doing great. If you look at it from the general fund and the revenue, we're down $30,000, which is not good.
Right, so how does that impact our taxpayers?
Well, I mean, it doesn't impact our taxpayers in the current year because the budget is set. We collected all the revenue that we needed for this year from the taxpayers. Typically, I think we're gonna have more than enough money to carry over, as far as we're not gonna be running a deficit. This year, it doesn't appear. I mean, obviously, we have some more time before final numbers come in. It would be better for the budget if we had that $30,000, but not having that $30,000 isn't gonna raise anyone's taxes this year or next, but it would, if we do have a surplus at the end of the year, it would reduce the amount of that surplus by that amount of money. That being said, I mean, we are collecting money every week and every couple days. There's deposits that are coming in, so that number will only improve from this point. It won't get worse.
Right, but it's almost the entire year, so is our general fund not doing as well because we have our municipal court now? Are we losing 30 grand this year because we have a municipal court in our general fund?
So the revenues coming to the general fund are 30,000 less because we have a municipal court. What I don't know is what that number would be if we were in a joint municipal court, or if we went to, for example, if we went to the circuit court system, that number would be, we would receive overall a whole lot less. I've been in municipalities where we were in the circuit court after leaving a joint municipal court, and then went back to a joint municipal court because the expenses and the revenues are so skewed if you just use circuit court. So I think we're better off than if we were in circuit court, but I don't know what the difference would be if we were still in a joint municipal court.
From my lay perspective, it looked like we were gaining $30,000 prior to this, prior to going to the municipal court, and now we're losing $30,000.
That could be, I mean, that's something I can check into to look at past years and what those experiences were. And I don't know how they've been affected by COVID either, because a lot of, this year's a complicated year. Plus, we're a new municipal court, but it's complicated because, at some points, the officers were being told, you don't do optional traffic enforcement. If you see someone doing 100 miles an hour down the road, you pull them over. But if they're doing, less than that, it's much more of a judgment call. And so traffic enforcement was curtailed severely. Court was shut down for a significant amount of time, and everything is just really drug on. So I'm not sure it's an easy apples to apples comparison, but we could get more information and look kind of at that to see.
I totally understand. It's a lot more complicated, and I 100% admit it's above my head, but looking at previous numbers and current numbers, it looks like it's about a $60,000 swing that is costing our taxpayers in order to have this municipal court instead of just being a part of the circuit court. So that does not seem like a good way to spend money to me. I think that's something we should look into.
That's probably not a horrible idea. The one thing I will say is that I believe state statute requires that for the entire elected term of the judge, you cannot abolish the court. So I think, I think we have, coming this May or June, 2 years past then before we could do something different. And hopefully in that time, we find a way and the court finds its stride in operating more efficiently. It's not a revenue generator, but we do want to be more efficient, so.
Alder Reed?
Oh, well, I can't recall what our costs were for the previous court. It had been a multi-year project to leave the, multi-municipality courts. And it's kind of unfortunate that it's hard to tell this year, financially if it was a good or a bad move. It's just such a different year.
I mean, for right now, it shows that it's, comparing it to net gains versus net loss, it's about a $60,000 loss for the city this year. But again, I'm a layperson, so.
And so, budget-wise, there's a swing there. But I think as you look at the amount of money, the $31,000 that the court has paid the city, you really have to look at what the city paid into the court. So it's really $50,000 that the city paid to subsidize the court operation, minus the $31,000. So you have $18,575. That's, I believe, the actual cost. Now, I think comparing it to previous years, you would have to look at not only what we received from that court, but also what we put in. And then I think there was additional factors, not being here, but I believe there was additional factors about court location, convenience to our residents, and the ability to be more self-determinate in sort of how the court operated and what its priorities were. But I think we can dive deeper into that at another committee as a whole. Just knowing that we're kind of in the situation we're in for a couple of years until that term of election is over.
Any further questions for Kyle about the treasurer's report? Seeing none? Okay. We will continue to, we'll get another update on this, Kyle, I presume, before the final, which hopefully will pan out a little differently. Is that correct?
Yeah, this was the October report. So ideally at the next meeting, you would have the November report. So you would be another month into the year. And I can pull up some old data too to see how the old Eastern Columbia County Joint Municipal Courts, I think it was,
Sure.
What their numbers, revenue and expenditures were for us.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. And we'll move on to number 6, which is the committee minutes from, we have the Columbus Water and Light minutes from September 15th, 2020, and then the Community Development Authority from August 17th of 2020 and September 21st of 2020. Are there any comments on the minutes? Seeing none? Okay. And then move on to number 7, which is review and discuss the Columbia County Health and Human Services 2021 MOU for nutrition site. This will come back to the regular meeting next time for approval if council doesn't see any issues with it. But this is a annual MOU with Columbia County. I do have Kim Lang here on conference call if there are any questions. Kim, did you have anything you wanted to mention specifically?
No, the contract is the same one that we've had every year. We charge them the maximum amount that they're allowed by the county to give to us. So, right now they're serving 52 meals that are delivered every day, so it's really good benefit. And really nothing about the contract is
So yes, each year the City of Columbus receives an MOU from Columbia County Health to use the senior center as a meal site. At this point now, they're delivering those meals so no on-site meals are served, and there's no cost to the city for the service. If council's okay with this can move forward then to the next regular meeting if there are no questions. Okay, seeing none. Then move that forward to the next regular meeting then. Number 8 is review and discuss the city's organizational chart. So this was really interesting to me. Administrator Ellison put this together, kind of updated our older chart we did have, and I really appreciated kind of the new flow of this chart, and it's much, although it's small print, much easier to read. So kind of start this off here. Are there any, I guess, questions about the flow chart from council or observations even at this point? So essentially what we are doing here, Kyle, is we're just approving the updated flow, which has been updated to currently how city is set up.
Correct. So this kind of matches where we feel we are currently. There were some slight tweaks with the HR administrator being added. The DPW position description has the wastewater reporting to them, and I think that was corrected for this. But it's a large, kind of complicated chart, and it's really the first step in a plan of administration, which was asked for basically during the recruitment process, and something that is incorporated in my position description. So something I certainly want to deliver, and this is the first step. And so while it's not very descriptive, it does show relationships. And so now's the time, if you see something off or if you see something should be represented differently, it's a great time to do this. Because then all my work after this would match up with whatever kind of the final version of the organizational chart is. And I have to throw out a recommendation to Pamela Frederick. This work is tedious and complicated, and Pamela did a great job on this, and I just get to be the one to present it, but it certainly was mostly her work.
Thank you for admitting that, Kyle, and thank you, Pamela. I guess the only thing that I did notice on here is under recreation. I didn't notice any of the recreation is it committee or commission, Amy Jo? Committee is not listed on here. I'm not sure if it should be, as well as the this CAAC isn't on here either. I don't know if there are other advisory committees that are not included on here either, but I don't know if how council feels about advisory committees being just kind of included in that city flow chart. And does anybody have any questions or comments? Paul Pfeifferon, did you have a question?
Not really a question for Kyle, but I guess I was wondering, it is really, I'm sure there's nothing wrong with it, I'm sure it's fine, but it's almost impossible to see it. And I was wondering if there's a screen that can be shared, we can look at a larger version of this flow chart.
I can. I could potentially download the packet and open the packet up and zoom into it.
Yeah, I'm sure everything's fine with it, but I can't make anything out.
All right. Ian does have his hand up,
Yep.
and maybe I can download while Ian's talking.
Okay. Alder Gray.
So I would like to see all of the advisory committees listed somehow on it. Also, since they are required to work with a city order to get in front of the council and do many things. Perhaps it should be organized to which committee falls under which city employee. That could potentially help them figure out how to do things better instead of having them all listed separately under one column. Maybe they could fall under different sectors of the city and different city employees. You know, like the CHLPC could be under, well, I mean, typically it'd be the DPW or, you know, like maybe we could reorganize it that way better so that they would understand their role and who they need to communicate with better.
Thank you, Ann. I think the majority of them are definitely under your position though, right, Kyle? Is that how you have it set up now?
It's, so it's kind of complicated, you know, different staff kind of with the different program areas that they cover often serve as the main staffer for different committees and commissions. And the plan that I had was to, you know, expound kind of more on that in the plan of administration, because it is kind of tough to see, you know, who's serving as the liaison to the staff versus who is actually, you know, supervised or kind of controlled by some of the committees or commissions. So there are different relationships and different levels, but I did plan on kind of expanding and expounding on that a little bit more in the more detailed plan of administration. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Kyle. I think that would help out all of the committees greatly.
There we are.
Now I gotta go back here. All right, do you want me to, would you like me to move this up further, or where should we start if there's any kind of desire to focus on one area?
Alder Piperon, I don't know if you're speaking, but you are muted.
Sorry about that. Maybe you could show the top more, but this is much better.
Top.
Perfect, thank you.
Would you like me to move it more to the right so you can see the rest of it? Because some of it is a little bit hidden right now.
Yes, please.
Also, just, you know, in real life, this is printed on a like a 11 by 17 double wide sheet, and it's even small at that point. So,
Right. No, I totally understand.
And Kyle, you could.
Looks fine. I just wanted to be able.
Thank you, Alder Piperon. And I assume when you bring this back with your more detailed plan, we'll see it kind of in a larger format and scale. But I think at this point, you're just looking for any kind of guidance in what we want to see added or ideas. Does anybody have any further questions or suggestions for Kyle on this? I'm not seeing any. Also, can't see everybody, so when we're like this.
My screen went weird. I don't know if you can hear me or if I'm muted or what happened.
We can hear you, Ian.
Okay, so I don't know how to mute myself again then. No, everything looks great. I would like to see the committees and commissions under specific city employees so that they know who they can report to and ask questions and get things accomplished with.
So there's a general outline and yeah, I agree that would be good. And I'm excited to see what Kyle brings back forward and Yep, I'm okay.
Oh, good. Normal screen again.
There you go. Okay. I guess we will move on then to number 9, which is review and discuss potential for downtown TID district. And for that, this evening, we have Matt Shriver with us, the economic developer for the city of Columbus. Go ahead, Matt.
This was something that's kind of been bubbling under the surface for a while, and one of the things when we went through the citizen engagement team and got the feedback for the roadmap project, downtown revitalization was a very key issue. We heard that loud and clear, and um, this was kind of thought about at the staff level for a while. Unfortunately, last couple of years we've had some issues with having available capacity to create a new TIF to accommodate the entire downtown. We could have done one for a smaller project area, but um, this fall, the DOR did their annual TIF capacity reports, and it showed that we now have $17 million in capacity, which means right now is a good time to be considering creating a TIF. If council is serious about having the downtown revitalized, the TIF is really the primary tool that we can use in Wisconsin to stimulate some economic development. So I thought I wanted to bring this to council tonight to kind of get the discussion, one, if they're interested, and then work out a few issues as far as the timeline goes. A few things to keep in mind. Right now, we're at 8.4% of our capacity, which equates to 17 million. And the other thing is, I included a map that kind of takes a stab at the areas that a downtown TIF could cover. That assessed value is right at 10.8 million, so clearly under that $17 million capacity threshold. So theoretically, the map could be a little bit bigger or smaller depending on what council wants. But then the other thing to keep in mind is this isn't going to hamstring us in the future, because in 2023, TIF 3 or TID 3 will expire, and that right now is $23.9 million. So in 2 years, essentially $23.9 million will come off the books and go back to all the taxing entities. So if we move forward with this TIF, I just wanted to make council aware that this isn't going to hurt us in the future. So it really just based on staff level review right now, it just seems like a good time to start kicking the tires and creating a TIF district downtown. So I guess with that, I'm looking for some sort of agreement on where the boundaries should be, and if council feels comfortable moving forward with that, I can work through a little bit of a timeline. But one of the first things we have to do is to have Greg Johnson, or not necessarily Greg Johnson, but Ellers is who we've used in the past, have Ellers develop a project plan for us and go through that process, and then we can start the process with the planning commission and the joint review board. But I guess for now, I'll just take questions and comments about the proposal I put forward. So.
Alder Reed.
Just want to say I'm very excited that this is finally looking to be a possibility to improve the downtown district. Besides roads, the main thing I hear about is the general sadness of disrepair of so many of our buildings. So I'd be especially excited to hear about some, facade improvements.
Additional comments for Matt or questions? Ian Gray?
I'm just trying to, in my mind, figure out where some of these areas are. The yellow, and I'm guessing that's the light blue adjacent to it.
So it's, yeah.
Are those?
Yeah, I should have updated that map now that I look at it. This was
project over by Vita Plus or the former Caldwell site, was a concept that was thought about at one point, and then we tried to basically incorporate from there all the way down to the downtown. The other areas of our downtown where we could have some infill development are basically along Water Street, so basically the corner of Water and James and the corner of well, both sides of the corner of Water and James, depending on what happens with the businesses there. If there's turnover, those are opportunities that could potentially come up down the road.
Thank you, Ian, for bringing that up. Matt, I was also going to ask you about that. So in my mind, we can scratch that, those two where it says project area and phase 2 from the
Correct. It was
map.
more of a conceptual
Gotcha.
plan at the time
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so I think, yeah, then your ideas of James and Water Street in that corner being included, or South Water Street and North Water Street, is that what you're saying? That South Water to East James, that block there?
Yeah, I think there's some sites in there that could potentially, depending on what happens
Yeah,
and how they turn over, I mean, there could always be potential for infill development there.
I would
It
agree.
just depends on obviously what happens with the businesses and the property owners. So.
Is there anybody that's kind of leaning towards objecting creating this TIF district, or do we pretty much have consensus at least on that and just mainly kind of focused on the map itself? Administrator Ellefson is asking to speak. Yes, please.
I just wanted to point out for potential additions to this area, I would recommend adding the fire station, the existing fire station at Ludington and Harrison. The beautiful part of it is at its current value of zero, it doesn't cost us anything to add it. But in the event that we build a new fire station and need to renovate this or turn it into some kind of commercial endeavor, it would already be in the TIF, and it would be much easier to provide incentives to help a project along.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I believe we
Isn't that
spoke about that
in
before. It's actually not highlighted right now, Ian. I think that you actually had brought it up when we looked into it at a previous meeting when we kind of spoke about this, but I think that had pretty broad consensus at that time too. So I think what we just
Definitely should be, but I must be looking at the map wrong. It looks like on my map that the fire station on mine is included.
So where you're looking at the map between the block, so where it says block 2, block 5, block 3, block 4, so that's the four corners downtown.
Okay, yeah, I get you. So, yep, it's not included, definitely.
Right.
Okay, got it.
It does kind of, you don't always look at the city from an aerial perspective, so does take a minute to get your bearings. But yeah, so where I'm looking at City Hall is where it says North Dickinson Boulevard, right across from Block 2. So if that gives you a preference, building, what is it, 51 there? Is that where we are, City Hall? So the fire station would be, you'd take a right onto South Ludington from there. And then it's below Block 3 at Building 124.
Okay, so it's 124 is the fire
Correct.
station?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
So I think what we could do here, Matt, and I'm seeing a lot of consensus, is just getting it, hopefully just an updated version of this district. I think you have a lot of support for this here. So to include the fire station, and then if I'm not mistaken, Matt, you're thinking of on South Water Street, between South Water and Waterloo Street, kind of that 1024 lot, and potentially the 954 lot across from East James. Is that what you were considering?
Yeah, probably from like Mill Street down to James, and then you're right, the city-owned parking lot, and then from the city-owned parking lot kind of north to James Street. That 2-block segment along Water on
the south side, seems like there's some opportunity there.
Okay,
As I said, if something came up, I'm not saying, that there's anything imminent,
Right.
but I mean, it has potential for infill development, I'll just put it that way.
I'd be
And
okay.
some of that along the Second Ward Creek back there is in the floodplain, so not all of that along Water Street is developable, but some
Sure.
of it is.
Okay. Okay. Any other suggestions? Oh, go ahead, Alder Gray.
And maybe across the street from the fire station on Leadington, it's been a Century 21. It doesn't look like it's operating that way anymore. I personally should know more about it, but I don't. That could be another area that could be developed.
Yeah. And the thing to note is we have 3 amendments. I think we can try to get it as accurate as we want the first time. But if there's a project that comes up that's right adjacent to the downtown TIF boundary, we do have 3 amendments. So
Okay.
the odds are we're not going to get it perfect the first time because who knows how we're going to grow in the next 20 years. So.
Sure. Thanks for that reminder. That's also helpful. Yeah, would council be okay with bringing this back to the next regular meeting, or do we think that it should come back to another cow? If Matt kind of takes the suggestions, draws new lines, and is that what you're suggesting, Matt, or?
I guess really.
Sorry, Trina, hold on. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say, really, the first decision point, I think, for council is approving us to move forward with some sort of project plan. When we did the TIF 5 project plan, I think it cost right around $14,000. Typically, what happens is once there's an increment, usually the city can front that money. Once there's an increment generated, basically that can be reimbursed to the city as sort of an administrative cost for setting up the TIF.
Mm-hmm.
So that would really be the first expenditure that we'd have to approve. And that would basically start the process of staff working with, I assume most likely Ellers to complete the work. But, and that's really, I was really looking to get concurrence that this is what council wanted and to kind of start that ball rolling so we can and at least start having conversations with Greg.
Okay. And yeah, I guess I was just thinking you were looking just for more specific advice on where, in addition to what you have highlighted here and retracted.
Yeah, I mean, this can go as quickly or as slowly as council desires. I mean, I think we probably could have a TIF created in probably 60 to 75 days if we wanted to go really quickly. I mean, otherwise, I think 3 to 4 months is probably if we're going to be taking our time and having a well thought out project plan. I think it'd probably take more like 3 or 4 months, but it's really up to the discretion of the council. As I kind of said before, just the timing seems right for this with what we have in capacity and the desire of our community to better our downtown. So
I agree. Thank you. So it sounds like, I guess we have consensus as far as wanting to begin the process of creating this downtown TIF district. So I think, as with anything, I think it's best to take your time and make sure you get things correct. But 3 to 4 months sounds like a doable project timeline. Seeing some nodding heads. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for bringing that forward, Matt.
yeah, my pleasure.
Okay. We'll move on then to number 10, which is review and discuss the budget expense line policy. And for that, we do have Kyle. There's a nice description in your packet in the memo that just kind of outlines the current process that was adopted in 2016 by the council. So I'll let Kyle kind of speak to what he's asking and why, I guess.
Thank you. So essentially, yes, this was adopted in 2016. It does lay out the different procedures and policies pretty well. I'm not certain that they've been followed 100% of the time for the past 4 years. And one of the areas, I think there's a lot of good stuff in here that I want to keep. One area where, I think we could take a different perspective on it is in the expense line category, where basically, each individual expense line is required to adhere 100% to its budget workbook amount that we assign to it, which again, the budget that we approved, if you remember from last week, is really some very broad categories like general government and public safety, things like that. And it doesn't dive down into, the office expense line is $25 over. So this policy kind of exceeds that and puts us down into all the expense lines that are individually there. And so what I've seen in the past that's worked better was to kind of functionally manage it by the different departments or different functions. So if you have the city hall, and if we have a strange year and we run off a whole lot more copies because we're mailing out a lot of information for COVID or for something else, the postage line might go significantly over, but then we might say, well, we have to cut back on training this year because we have to stay within our budget. So primarily that's what I've seen work better, is to say, City Hall needs to meet its budget. If it's a little over here, it needs to be a little under in a different area to accommodate that. I think the underlying expectation is that you're still accomplishing everything you need to accomplish. You're not going out to, buy a luxury item by overspending in one area and then not doing, the lawn mowing or something like that in another area. And one of the things I've seen in the past is when you get to this time of year, it's like, oh, the office supply or operating expenses is almost out. Well, if we're going to buy it, we're going to buy it, but we're going to categorize it as something a little different than we would normally do it. And, so there's just a whole variety of reasons I think it might make more sense to kind of budget for the overall impact of staying within the broader budget, but not get into the weeds as much on individual lines. It's something that we can do. I'm just not sure it achieves necessarily what we're ultimately trying to do, is to have every time one of those goes over, have it come to the committee of the whole and then the city council with multiple layers of justification, because essentially we're all doing the best guesses we can. And the other thing that could push you to do would be to pad every line so that you never go over. And that's really, adding needless dollars to the budget in that aspect. But interested in kind of the perspective of the council and what they feel comfortable with.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, so essentially, just not, I guess, following every tiny nickel and dime and really just making sure everything it falls under one.
Yeah, I think
one
it's more
line,
the expectation that I should be following the nickels and dimes and managing it with my department heads versus every single line needing city council approval.
Right. Alder Reed?
So in general, I'm definitely for giving more flexibility to the department heads to kind of flex within their budgets for needs that come up. I was just wondering if there should be a certain dollar number that we should set for not needing any kind of for not needing approval.
So, Trina, I think within here, basically they'd still have to talk to Kyle about changing where the budget lines are, and not exceeding their full budget anyway.
This is not necessarily any new budget authority. It would be, the one that comes to mind from this year is the fire department has had a significant amount of unexpected vehicle repairs. And I think they've exceeded their budgeted line by like $14,000. So what that means is that they've reduced all their other expenses to bring it back in line. So it's kind of independent to each each budget. We could assign a dollar amount to say, kind of mirroring the purchasing policy, if you want to say $10,000, if any line goes outside by 10,000, we could do that, but in some lines, 8,000 would be 100 times what the line is, and in other lines, it would be, a 20% increase. So, I mean, we could certainly work on it, and add some kind of metrics, though.
Alder Gray.
So I very much share the same viewpoint as Alder Reed. I think it's a great, it would expedite a lot of things, it would streamline a lot of things, and it would make a lot of things easier. And with our current city employees and our current administrator, I would trust that completely. But we're approving things of this nature not just for our current city staff and our current administrator, but for future ones as well. So I would side on Alder Reed's caution of creating some sort of stop loss number, or percentage would probably be more adequate, since each budget is so different. A specific number is probably not appropriate, but a percentage of that would probably be more appropriate.
Thank you, Ian. Kyle, is that something you think you could work off of if we said it was 30%, or does that make it really, I guess I'm just trying to understand how complicated that would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure right now. I think probably, as I go back and look at the individual examples where I would expect to see something like that, I would just, I think want to look at, well, what would 30% look like in this fund group, or what would that accommodate? Because I don't think it's a bad sentiment to kind of strike that balance between giving staff more freedom to, kind of achieve the goals with the resources they've been allocated, but also not just saying, let us know how it went at the end of the year without any kind of check or balance there. So I certainly think I could find a percentage or dollar amount, or, an either or kind of measurement. I just probably have to play around with it a little bit to see what's functional.
Sure. How, I guess, does everybody agree that maybe is everybody okay with a percentage, or do we not think there should be a percentage, or what is, Alder Adams?
Well, if we're gonna go that route, I think a percentage makes a little bit more sense. Like Alder Gray said, different budgets can have different numbers. So I think what that percentage is gonna look like for each. Now, I guess one thing I'm not clear on, are we talking like a percentage over each budget line, or a percentage over the budget total, I guess is my question.
Kyle, am I understanding it correctly? It's the budget lines that we're changing and not the overall.
Yeah, so as I was imagining in my head, the percentage I was allocating it to the expense line, and that was giving me a little bit of heartburn, because I'm thinking some lines have, $200 to them, and if you get a strange year where you have postage or something unusual, 30% of $200 doesn't add up to much. So I might look at it and say, if that fund group area, had a $10,000, that any line would be able to move up to a certain percentage of that, would give you more latitude. The problem being on the much larger budgets, say like the police department patrol, that's got a lot of salary in it. 10% of that would be tens of thousands of dollars. So I would have to work on, kind of how that works.
Would that kind of make any of this easier, or would it make it actually more difficult than it is now? I guess because at that point I'm like, is this worth considering, or is this going to be exactly the same amount of work or more if that was the way we implemented it?
I think it really depends on the design.
Yeah.
The design and the percentage and what you bank the percentage off of. So I would probably play around with that and bring it back for more discussion, I would think, but I'm open to hearing any other ideas on the kind of parameters or ranges they're thinking.
Okay. I apologize, I don't know who was first between Alder Gray and Alder Reed.
I think Reed had her hand up first.
Go ahead, Alder Reed.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I guess I was leaning towards percent of their total budget. I just wanted there to be some sort of stopgap check to make sure things weren't wildly fluctuating.
Thank you, Trina. Alder Gray?
So I think what might, and I mean, we're going to rely on Kyle on figuring this out a lot, which I apologize, Kyle. But I think what might make the most sense is we do a percentage not to exceed a specific dollar amount. So, you know, because some budgets are going to be massively different than others. So, you know, if we say it's 10% of your budget or 20 or 30%, but not to exceed X amount of dollars, and then that needs approval, I think that's probably the most logical and easy way to go about it, just in my mind. Again, we're going to rely on you a lot for this, Kyle, but maybe that could simplify it.
Yeah, I think a percentage, and then if we mirror dollar amounts, we could mirror the purchasing policy on when things need council approval versus when it just needs my approval with multiple bids. So I think we could incorporate that.
Alder Adams?
I just wanted to agree with Alder Gray. That's a pretty solid idea, and I'd be for that.
Okay. Kyle, do you have the direction I think that you need then?
Yes, I think so. And did anyone have anything else they noticed in the policy? Otherwise, I think there's, a lot of good things in there, so we would be maintaining it and just maybe, tweaking this one area. But if there's anything else, we can tweak it at the same time.
Seeing
All right,
none.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so number 11 is review and discuss city service bids. And we are gonna kind of go through each contract here. And Kyle has volunteered to kind of help us look at each one individually. Starting with A, which is the Hillside Cemetery interment contract.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be a little bit tedious because the bids for each of these is just a little bit different and the situations are a little different. So it really is probably better to go one by one. And fortunately, the first one is probably the easiest. The Hillside Cemetery Internment Services, there was a single bid. There were we've used Meitner Land Service in the past. We're happy with them. So the recommendation was to approve the contract to Meitner's Land Service for 2021 and 2022 at the amounts stated. That's the simple one.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any questions on that one.
Questions, no questions?
All right, the Hillside Cemetery Turf Maintenance Services, there was 3 bidders that indicated interest in this. The staff have suggested the lowest qualified bidder, which is not overall the lowest bidder. They're recommending going with the company that currently has the bid, which they are kind of middle of the 3 bids as far as their overall cost. The concern that staff at DPW had was that the lower bidders' references were for smaller scale jobs. This is a 26-acre parcel with a significant amount of obstructions and impediments and gravestones, and it's tricky work. I know from other communities this is not easy work, and it's easy to get complaints and make people unhappy. So there was just a concern with the bids and the capability of the low bidder to call them qualified from a staff perspective. But there probably should be discussion on if the council feels the same way, and it should be awarded to the Signature Lawn Care, the current bidder, or if there should be reconsideration of the absolute low bidder, regardless of maybe any concerns.
Any immediate concerns or questions, guys, from council? I guess, I mean, reading that, and I know that the Hillside Cemetery is a very complicated job to mow. I mean, that's a very, very steep hill. I mean, that's your first challenge, not to mention the gravestones and all of the other impediments, but $1,600 per event to the, I'm sorry, yeah, $1,600 per event from 1752, so it's $150 savings per event. It's difficult because I think that the reason why that decision was also ultimately made, not only are they stating that we're happy with our current signature lawn care, but I also think that just that there was no, or the referrals, or what was it, the references, sorry, from Happy Mower didn't have many larger scale jobs at this point. So it's kind of hard to make that decision, but. So everybody seems to be okay with the decision of, or the recommendation by staff to continue with the current. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that other quote that was received, the highest quote, at $3,865 per event, seems like we are getting a great deal from Signature Lawn Care if that's the other alternative out there as well, so.
Yeah, and additionally, the 2021 rate is the same as the 2020 rate that we're currently receiving. So year over year, there would be zero increase, and then the increase in the second year of the contract.
Okay. Are okay with sticking with that at this point? Okay. All right, we can move on to C, electrical maintenance.
All right, electric, this one should be on the easier side as well. There was two bidders. The low bidder is our current contract holder, and we've been happy with their work. So we would like to stay with the low bidder and award that to SNS Electric for the rates stated.
Okay. Seeing a lot of nodding heads. Okay.
All right, next one is the municipal HVAC services. This one is one of a little bit more difficult ones. So we had two bidders, and the bids were due, I believe, last Monday, not yesterday, but a week ago Monday. And based on what the city received at the time, and when the packet was created, the staff recommended the lowest bidder, which was Latitude 43 HVAC and Energy Solutions. The current contractor, TAS, didn't respond in time. They were sent an email, and as well as we published the bids. There was apparently an error on their part or a misunderstanding, but they kind of called yesterday a little bit frantically and turned in a bid, which I have in an unopened envelope yesterday. So obviously they didn't meet the time frame that the others did. So I don't know what the bid is, but I do know that the recommended award has a lower rate than the current rate we're paying TAS. So I mean, I think when you look at the purchasing policy, it really talks about attaining maximum economy for our operations to the advantage of the local taxpayers, providing equal opportunity for qualified vendors, and using local businesses when it's practical and competitive. So if we're going to adhere to the kind of standards of the process and say that the deadline was what it was, and everyone had an equal opportunity to apply in that time frame, I think we stick with this recommendation. The unfortunate part is I think staff really do like TAS, and I think they're doing a good service. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like it worked out in this situation, and so the recommendation is to go with Latitude 43.
I agree that it's an unfortunate situation, but I do also agree that we have to stick to our policies. Just having, I mean, the packets at that point were already printed. The other, you know, rates were already out. Granted, they didn't come in lower or $1 lower or something ridiculous like that, but I think just as a principle, if we're gonna follow a strict bid process, I think that we have to do our due diligence and stick to that, so. Do I have any comments or concerns from council? Ian, Gray?
Where is latitude, 43 out of?
I believe they're out of Cottage Grove.
I have some concerns with, would it be out of line to reopen the bid process for another week so that we could entertain TAS's bid?
You know, Paul might have a recommendation, but once the numbers are out there, you almost have to scrap the entire process because, you know, bidding once your competitors' bids are out there is not fair in any regard. So you'd almost have to just throw it out and start over, I think.
Did TAS bid after it was public knowledge?
Yeah, it was Monday morning, and the packets were published, you know, last week and available electronically.
That's super unfortunate, but I would have to agree with Katie in that instance. I would much rather keep it local with TAS, but I think I have to agree with Katie.
Any other comments or concerns? Or everybody okay with going with the recommendation of latitude 43 HVAC out of Cottage Grove? I agree, it's an unfortunate situation. But, all right, thank you, Kyle. E, plumbing maintenance
Yes.
contract.
So plumbing, no bids were received in accordance with the time frame. And of course, the agenda was published, and then Monday morning, the second knock on the door was from the plumber, Wright Plumbing, and they submitted the only bid, but it wasn't within the time frame. And again, even though you're saying they're not bidding against anybody, just the fact of saying nobody else bid, here, take mine, you can really name any number you want at that point. So I guess we're looking for some indication on if you want to redo the bidding process or if we want to just do a you know, per incident kind of call and manage our contractors directly. We do have other contractors that we like to work with and they do a good job, but they're not comfortable with some of the terms that we request, like must be able to respond within 3 hours. Some are uncomfortable with that kind of language, so they won't bid.
So upon learning that, I was curious as to like how appropriate that 3-hour window is to be asking for, and if we are limiting ourselves to not receive enough bids to understand what's the competitive rate out there. So, and how quickly we would actually need plumbing service and how often that happens. I understand that, you know, these things can be tricky, and if it happens in one building where we have, you know, 15 sinks and toilets and one is kaput, then it's maybe not a big deal as if it happens in a building where we only have one. So it kind of, but I wonder if expanding that 3 hours would get us a better grouping of bids. I also just don't think we should just open that bid and just take that. I don't think that would be fair. Either we open the bidding process again and maybe expand that hour requirement of being here. So I don't know. What does the rest of council feel? Alder Gray?
I very much agree with you. I think we should reopen the bidding process with an expanded response time. I mean, we do have a DPW. I think any emergency situations, we could shut off water mains, we could do things to mitigate it. I don't know if we need a plumber to be able to respond within 3 hours realistically. And if we lengthen that duration, we could receive competitive bids. So I think it would be in our best interest to reopen the bidding process.
Seeing a lot of nodding heads. Alder Adams?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I concur.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay. I guess the next question is then, like, how long do we extend that window of time? Is 6 hours appropriate? Is 9 hours appropriate? I'm not sure what other places are asking for, or other municipalities. I have no idea what would be normal.
Pete's, Adams.
Oh, Alder Adams, go ahead.
I guess my question is, what situations have arisen in the past in which you needed a quick response from a plumber? And maybe that we could kind of off that.
The pavilion, during events would be one, and also the swimming pool, I think would probably be the other one. Otherwise, I think, you're just looking at different buildings that might have, toilets that either break or are broken, sinks, things like that. But again, we do have access to water and light, and if a building needs to be shut off at the curb, that's pretty easy for us to have done. So there are some of those more sensitive areas, but I don't know if Amy Jo wants to speak to any of those and how urgent her needs would be.
It all would depend. I mean, DPW, they have really good plumbers on site, so they can always come out and fix things at the pavilion. Water and light shuts things down. We had a really big leak a couple years ago at the pavilion. Water and light shut off the outside spigot, and the plumber came in the next day. So
Okay. I don't know if you guys could hear, she shared just a couple of scenarios about the pavilion needing work, but we have a couple of really good plumbers at within DPW, and also received some help from Water and Light, sounds like, and then until a plumber arrived the next day. So I guess, do we want to say 12, 24? 9, 24 hours?
There's a couple that have.
Alder Adams?
Well, if we have that capability where we can deal with things in the short term, I would say if we expand it to like a 12-hour time frame, and then hopefully by that time we'd be able to get somebody to come in and take care of the follow-up after our first mitigation efforts, that might be reasonable.
I guess that kind of, Alder Gray, go ahead.
I personally would be, considering what we're capable of doing, I would be comfortable with a 24-hour time frame, and I think that would open us up to a lot more potential bidders. That's more standard, and I think we could get more potential people bidding and have a much more, we'd be able to choose from people instead of having a singular bidder pass time.
Okay. I guess that just kind of, in my mind, begs the question, should we have this whole contract, or should we just, I guess, per incident, call, plumbers that we have a good relationship with already? Alder McCabe?
I just want to agree with Alder Gray. I think within 24 hours would be a good time frame for somebody to respond, since we can do it for emergency purposes, take care of what needs to be done before that.
Kyle, do you happen to know if there are any, by having this contract, is there any benefit to having this contract, or if we were just to go to plumbers by incident that we already have a relationship with, per incident, I guess, would we get charged more? Would we get charged less? Or
I mean, I think it's hard to tell. It probably depends on the situation. It probably depends on what their normal rates are. You're not going to get a break, but there's no guarantee you'd get a break on the bid price anyways. So it does give you a little bit more flexibility to say, well, this one's really important and we need the pool addressed right now, so we're gonna call around till we get someone who can come here, versus, well, we do have to wait the 24 hours, and in some situations, or most, that probably is no big deal, but this would give you the flexibility if you go kind of on a one-off basis with people that we know and trust. There might not be any savings, but there might not be a whole lot of increased cost either.
Right, by just going incident by incident is what you're saying. Ugh. Alder Gray.
I like the known quantity of a contract personally. And I understand that it might not cost more, it might cost less, it might cost more. I like known quantities.
Alder Reed. You're on mute, Alder Reed.
Thank you. I'm gonna concur. I prefer having a regular person to call upon. I just think there's so many situations where, yes, we'll be able to shut off the water to, the overflowing sink or what have you, but it would be nice to have a regular person.
Does the rest of council agree that they'd rather have a contracted plumber than go incident by incident? Okay. Okay, so, and I think the consensus then was 24 hours is what I was gathering. Okay. All right. So I guess you get the direction there, Kyle. So we will be opening up, I guess, the bid process all over again and beginning with that 24-hour period to see what we can attract.
Yep.
As far as, okay, great. Just a real quick question, the bid that we did receive, do we require then that they resubmit?
Yeah, I didn't open that one either. Essentially, with this reopened bid, anyone interested would have to resubmit a bid within that time frame.
Okay.
There might be a difference in cost having a much longer time frame to respond, because they can kind of schedule their work, so there might be a lower rate that we would get. So.
Sure, okay. All right. Then we'll move on to F. The tree service.
All right, so this one had two bids. This is another situation where staff reviewed the people that bid on this and what their references were and what their experience were, and they're recommending the lowest qualified bidder, which is our current provider, but which is not the lowest ultimate overall bid. None of the references for, and this is the same contractor that was discussed earlier, none of the references included any tree or stump removal. It was basically lawn care and landscaping. And so staff were, even though there was a slightly higher price, they felt more comfortable with our current provider. And year-over-year rate, the current provider increased their prices by 1.5% over what the current year is. So very consistent on kind of where they're going. There was not a huge jump in price. And I believe last year or 2 years ago when they bid, they were the single bidder in the process. So I guess I'm looking for a direction on taking the staff recommendation with the lowest qualified bidder, or if there's questions about going to the other bidder.
Alder Gray.
So when they didn't provide references for like stump removal and things, did we ask them for references for that, or did we just go off of the references they provided and not ask for additional?
I think we went off the references that were provided and used those to base the evaluation off of.
And it makes it difficult because, I mean, maybe they just picked a few references, like, who knows, perhaps they are capable of doing all of these things, and perhaps they are capable of doing it for less, but we don't really know.
I would agree. I I guess without seeing what the, so what the application looked like, I guess, without, it's difficult of what they filled out and why they chose the references that they chose, but if they specifically in the application said, these are the services that the city is searching for, we would like references to all. Yeah. So that one's difficult for me, but.
And if there's additional information, not changing the bids or the bidders, but we can, if there's a desire to go back and look at additional information or the application, I think we could consider that in 2 weeks as well. If we want to hold it back for one more committee of the whole meeting.
Is there an urgency?
We're going into winter. Does it make a difference if we hold it back for one meeting?
Well, I mean, they actually do, I think, some tree removal in the upcoming months, but we wouldn't be doing any on the new contract till January 1. So holding off 2 weeks, I don't think will have a negative impact.
KB was cutting down some trees on my block this morning. So we might want something for the winter.
Well, like Kyle said, though, this wouldn't go into effect until January 1st. How does the rest of council feel? Do you guys want to see more information, or Alder Adams?
So if it's a question of just finding more information on the other contractor, shelving it for 2 weeks, I don't think will make that much of a difference. So if we want to go down that route, let's just contact them and see if they can perform the services. If they can, they can. If they can't, they can't. Or if they can provide references, they can. If they don't have references, then we'll know for sure.
I just find it interesting how similar the rates are. So, I mean, I guess it's more of just wanting to hold a fair bidding process is my biggest concern, more than saving, the 65 cents, essentially. Wow, it's because they're very, very close in the costs. So, I guess my only concern is holding it off 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks prior to the contract actually beginning then, basically. Because we are already in December, and my only concern is that, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We've had to hold meetings in various fashions and things like that, which, that's my concern there. So, but, I mean, it's not a huge savings, and I don't know. Without knowing how they arrived at, or how they asked for references, or if they were asking for qualifications in their references, it's very difficult. So,
It's a hard one.
yeah, and maybe if we could just see that application, and does it say, here's exactly what the city is looking for? We're gonna need, tree trimming, stump removal, is that listed in there? We would like you to provide references of all of those things, otherwise we're going to automatically disqualify you. That's where my concern is. So I guess if the rest of council is on board with that, and just taking a peek at that, but I mean, if we do look at it and we can't find what we're looking for, then I don't feel like we have a lot of options but to move forward with the recommendation. I don't know that we can ask for further information after the bidding process is closed, but I think it would just point out a weak spot in that we need to hold our bidding processes equally and make sure that we're you know, giving equal opportunity for competitive bids. So that's, I guess, I think what's going to come of this regardless. Go ahead, Alder Gray.
So would it be, we'll have to approve this at our next council meeting either way, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, everything here would be if recommended to move forward, would be coming up in 2 weeks.
So could we move this forward based on the recommendation of city staff after they gain this information? Like, we don't necessarily have to bring this back to the COW. The staff could potentially get more more references and things, or lack thereof, keep their same recommendation or alter it, and vote on it at the next city council meeting, either way.
I'm okay with that. Everybody else seems to be.
Yeah, I think as long as it's gone to the committee of the whole once, that kind of meets the standards, so.
Yeah, we're not adding any new bidders, it's just we're looking at the same information. Okay.
Yeah, just clarifying things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ian. Okay. I think we have what we need to move on to G.
All right, so this one, there was 2 bidders, and of course, in kind of keeping in tune, the bids were exactly the same in the labor rate. However, Happy Mower had a 36-hour response time versus a 48-hour response time for the other bidders, so the recommendation was to go with Happy Mower with the shorter response time.
Totally fine with that. Any other questions, objections to that? Okay. Is this Happy Mower, is this a local company? Kyle, do you know?
I'm not sure if they're local. I got the impression that they're a newer company that
Okay.
is, looking to really kind of expand and break in.
Sure. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. Number 12, move on here to convene to close session for state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically city administrator contract amendment. I'll need, thank you.
Alder Gray moves to convene to closed session for the reasons read.
Adam seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to move into closed session. Pat, would you please take the roll?
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we are in closed session.
President, is there a separate link?